This is Reconstruction, South Carolina Social Studies Standard 8.5. 8.5-1 Standard and Essential Questions. Analyze the development of Reconstruction policy and its impact in South Carolina, including the presidential and congressional Reconstruction plans, the role of Black codes, and the Freedmen's Bureau. Essential question number 1. How did the Reconstruction policy develop? Number 2. How did Reconstruction impact South Carolina? Number 3. What are differences and similarities between the presidential and congressional Reconstruction plans? Number 4. What role did Black codes play in Reconstruction? Number 5. How did the Freedmen's Bureau assist in Reconstruction? Black codes and racial tension. Although freedom brought significant social change for African Americans, initially there was little change for the white population. Social classes remained fairly stable despite the loss of economic status by the planter elite. If you think about it, a planter normally owns a plantation because they plant crops. And if you have crops and you have slaves, then that means you had money, so that made you elite socially. The Black codes demonstrated that white South Carolinians were unwilling to recognize the social and political rights of the newly freed slaves. Both groups preferred to maintain a social distance that slavery had not allowed. African Americans left the white churches for congregations of their own. They moved from slave quarters to plots away from the big house to establish their own communities. So the African Americans were moving on, again, as I said before, and establishing independence from the white society in which they had lived for so long. This separation and loss of control over African Americans caused anxiety among whites to escalate. That means it got a little bit louder. White South Carolinians resented African Americans who were now free of imposed submissiveness of slavery, and some white Southerners feared retaliation of their former slaves. So they thought the slaves were going to come back and get them because they had been enslaved for so long. The formation of terrorist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan reflected mounting racial tension and the determination of the white population to keep the African American population in its quote-unquote place, socially, politically, and economically. The KKK. Many whites were upset by the Republican rule of the government. Some were so angry, again, they formed the Ku Klux Klan, which fought for white supremacy. If you don't know what supremacy is, I suggest you pull out that iPad and look it up. The Klan committed violent acts against blacks and Republicans. Republicans organized a state militia to fight against the Klan. Even though many people didn't vote in the 1868 election because of the Klan's intimidation, Republican candidate Ulysses S. Grant still won. So in spite of all the intimidation of the Klan, and there's no telling what they did, if you'd like to know, you can also go on the iPad and Google Klan activity during the election of 1868 to find out what they did to intimidate voters. On page 206, there's a political cartoon, and there's a question. Members of the White League and the Klan shake hands over the lost cause and a banner that reads, "The Union as it was. This is a white man's government." Why do you think the cartoonists viewed the events during this time period as worse than slavery? It's something that you might want to think about and answer. We have another political cartoon, and it's about Democrats. The caption beneath read, "We regard the Reconstruction Act, so-called, of Congress as usurpations, meaning they usurped or took power, and unconstitutional, revolutionary, and void." And this is the Democratic platform of 1868. Again, this is something that you want to think about. Why is it that they are stepping on this black man holding up these signs with different symbols on them? So let's look closely. If you turn to page 197 in your textbook, we'll look at this cartoon a little bit closely. It says this political cartoon appeared during the 1868 presidential campaign in which Republican Ulysses S. Grant ran against Democrat Horatio Seymour. The cartoonist Thomas Nast criticizes the Democratic Party for its opposition, meaning they're against Reconstruction. How can they tell that the three men pictured represent Democrats? So make sure you take a good look at this photo and analyze it. What symbolism does Nast use to represent Democrats and their opposition to Reconstruction? And we will talk about this. Who does each person represent? Again, who does each person represent? So take a good look at that political cartoon on page 197 of your South Carolina Journey textbook.